Greetings. Welcome to day 9 of 30 Days of Halloween. Today, Senor Bruja and I are going to talk to you about speaking with the dead. Speaking with the dead. We're doing a lot of preparations right now, getting ready to speak to the dead. And I don't want to confuse you. This video is not about setting up ancestor altars or doing dumb suppers or anything, the actual welcoming of the dead. We're not talking about that now. I'm talking this video is specifically going to be about methods of communication that you can use to speak with the dead. It would be lovely if the dead, if your grandmother could just really just knock on my door and come in and sit down with me and have a cup of tea with me and just sit and chat and then for a while and then leave. It's not quite as simple as that. You know that. It's not quite as simple. She's not of this world. She's on a different, she's not earthbound. She's not in her physical body. She has transcended into another type of energy. So we have to use tools. We have to use some kind of a tool in order to communicate with the dead. And I'm just going to talk to you about what options might be available to you. Give some consideration. You need to do what is right for you. Don't do what I do. But I have a few suggestions that you could try if you're not sure. I also might have a few cautions that you might consider. And the first one I want you to consider is that we don't need to speak at all. You don't have to include talking to actually communicate with your ancestors. That seems kind of obvious, but is it really? What I mean is there are forms of communication that have no words, really. I talked to you before about how I have dreams where the dead appear in my dreams, and as the veil is getting thinner and thinner, I seem to have a higher occurrence, perhaps, of the dead just coming to me in my dreams, not necessarily talking to me, but they're just there. They're just a presence with me in my dream. Now, they really don't seem to have anything to do with my dream most of the time. So you would say, well, what are they there for? Well, I think they're there to remind me that they're present here in my life. If they're with me in my dreams, I think they're with me in my life. Okay. But you could have a communication where you would be dreaming about them. They wouldn't be physically present. And if you were speaking to them using actual words, and you're able to do that, which I have done in the past, I said that yesterday or the day before, I've done that in the past. But those are words in my dreamlike state. So count that as words or not, I'm not sure. But we can even go further than that and not have words at all. There is a woman here on YouTube by the name of Tess Whitehurst. I'm looking at my notes to make sure. She does a lovely, I don't know that I have a link to it. I could try to find the link for you. She does a lovely guided meditation or a visualization kind of a meditation here on YouTube where she just guides you to meet up with your loved ones who are deceased. And, your eyes are closed. You're not speaking at all. You're listening to her guidance. You're visualizing and greeting, welcoming, being in the presence of your ancestors, sharing the feeling of love, sharing the feeling of being together with them. It's really a very lovely meditation, and you can do something like that. You can do something like that on your own, just by perhaps, maybe doing some kind of a, your own kind of a meditation. Maybe have some music on in the background or some incense, particularly if you have an incense that is a fragrance of, a very evident one would be something like some of the spicy, some aftershaves that maybe your grandfather had, or my grandfather, there's a pipe tobacco that he smoked that triggers the memory of him all the time. My grandmother, when when I have certain smells, lavender or something, of course, reminds a lot of us of our grandmothers. Jergens lotion, the smell of Jergens lotion, the original formula of Jergens lotion. Um, I can put that on my hands, and I can smell my hands while I'm meditating, and it triggers it set up a sort of a bond with my grandmother. So we can use those kind of things. We can also use things like automatic writing. I've talked to you about automatic writing in the past, where it is just basically you just set out to write. I've spoken of it, I believe, in the sense that as we're doing it in the Artist's Way, I forget the name. I mentioned a book called The Artist's Way, and I'm sorry that the name of the author is slipping my mind. I could try to find that, where she has you write every morning upon rising, before you even get out of bed, 3 pages, automatic pages, just writing whatever's in your head, whatever's in your head. And I told you how it just sort of seems to make sense and come together. You could do a meditation, but instead of just the meditation, you could have, sit down in a comfortable position, maybe again with the music, maybe with the stimulus of some kind of a fragrance, whatever you can use, and consider your speak, could picture yourself in your mind speaking to your ancestor and writing out the questions that you would want to ask of them, and just talking to them about the subjects of those questions. And after a little time, perhaps while you're writing, answers will start to come from you that it would be from your ancestor. Do you understand what I'm talking about? That's one way to communicate. Okay. Now there are more obvious ways of communicating and more common ways of communicating. We all know about going to a psychic or a medium and having us communicate in that way. And of course, again, we have something that comes up as a seance, something like a seance that can come up. We can also talk about using things like throwing bones, which is asking questions and then reading the answers in the bones. Um, a pendulum comes to mind as well. This is just a small pendulum that I use for sometimes when I do tarot readings. That you need to get you need to be able to hold it still, and you need to visualize. And just every time you get a new pendulum, every time you want to try one, excuse me, when you're using a new pendulum, you need to meet the pendulum, and you need to say things like, "Show me what a yes is. Show me what a yes is," and just wait and try not to move and see a yes. And very specifically now my pendulum has moved towards the front and towards the back, back to front, back to front. My pendulum reads that as a yes. Now I might say, show me no. Show me a no. Try not to move. You see it's starting to sputter a little bit. Make tiny circles. Show me a no. Show me a no. And there he is. Side to side, side to side. It's a subtle movement, probably from where you're looking. Side to side. Show me a no. And there we have it, back and forth. Pendulum, you can ask yes and no questions. Okay. So if you wanted to communicate with your loved one and you have specific questions that can be answered with a yes or no, pendulum might be an option. Okay. I think you can tell that I'm putting off what I'm going to say next. One of the most common ways of communicating with the deceased is through spirit boards. Some of you might know it as a Ouija board, a specific kind is a Ouija board. A Ouija board is something that is, it was during the 60s, 1960s, it was, I think in the 1960s, in the 50s maybe, but and definitely in the 1960s, it was sold through I'm not sure, Hasbro, as a toy, as a game. And when I was growing up, when I was a young girl, like junior high, 7th grade, 8th grade, we had a lot of slumber parties and we had girlfriends, and inevitably someone would bring out a Ouija board. And you know what I'm going to say next? Inevitably, we had a bad experience. We were children. We were playing with it. We didn't know what we were doing. Who knows what? It's creepy having summer parties anyways. But specifically, summer parties that I had where I was growing up, they were always out in the country somewhere, somebody's house. We were probably in the house, but we were probably out on the porch or maybe in the backyard or around a fire. There was always ghost stories, and we were very sensitive to spirits and ghost things in a small town and rural areas where there's a lot of old houses where they neglected. The house is falling down and the grounds around the house are neglected, and a lot of the windows are boarded up, and there's some old lady living inside who's like kind of crazy, and she's known as there's all kinds of stories associated with these houses, and how many people have died in the houses, and typical small town rural tales, folklore tales. A lot of local cemeteries. We had cemeteries dating back to the you know the Revolutionary War, the French and Indian War. You know, um, where I'm from, graves, Indian graves, people graves, settlers that settled before Pennsylvania was even when it was still a colony. Um, so a lot of who knows what truth and not truth goes into a party like that. And inevitably, what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of experiences, and this is my teenage years, and I don't know. I know a lot of it might be true, might not be true, but as a result, I really don't use a Ouija board. I have one, and I will show it to you. I will share it with you in a minute. But I want to say I don't normally use it. I I know that a lot of you will. I know a lot of you already do. I know there are people. We do not eat Senor Bruja. Sorry about that. A lot of you use spirit boards regularly, and that's one of your favorite forms of communication with the energies, divination. Some of you use it for. Um, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I think it's wonderful if you can. But for me, it has never been really that big of a good experience, so I tend not to use it. I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to turn mine over and turn my camera around, and I just want to tell you that there are a few. If you're going to use it, I did a lot of research because I wanted to talk to you honestly and try to give you as much information as I could about a spirit board because I knew it would be coming up. I wanted to let you pass on what I think I know about them. And I seem to have found a lot of people that say the same kind of things, offer the same kind of cautions about them, offer the same kind of information about them. So I'm going to share that with you at least, and I'm going to I'll give you the name of somebody, I'll have to look it up, and recommend some people on YouTube that you might want to look at. Because a lot of the videos on YouTube, when you look at a Ouija board or a spirit board, are all about these crazy kids doing these stupid experiments, whatever, with them. They're making fun of it. A lot of people are making fun of it. And I don't think it's something to be made fun of. I don't, however you look at it. So I'm going to just change my camera because I want to show you mine. Show you what it looks like if you don't know. I don't know how you don't, but some people don't, Some people just don't. And then I'm going to just give you just a few things, bits of information that I have concerning this spirit board. Okay, here is my Ouija board. And I don't know what is the matter with me. Of course, it's manufactured by Parker Brothers. I don't know why I didn't think that. Of course, I knew that. Um, there are some that are very old boards. A lot of these boards are highly collectible. Some of them are very, lovely, actually. This is just one that was, which was manufactured and sold as a toy, as a game. It's called the William Fold talking board set. Excuse me, Senor Bruja. Move your appendages out of the way. You've got your tail. He's got his tail's in the way. Okay. But it's called, the Ouija uh, Mystifying Oracle, and it's very simple. It has an alphabet. It has yes, no. It has numbers, and it has goodbye, which is really, this is something we want to remember. Goodbye. Goodbye. We'll talk about it in a minute. And it comes with a board, and it comes with a planchette. They come with a planchette, which has feet, and the feet, it sits, and people sit with their fingers on it, and you sit in a group, and everybody sits around the board, just lightly pressing their fingers on it. And I'm going to take it off right now, because I don't want to do it, but that's how it's done. I'll explain that to you in a minute. Just setting it to the side, because I want to talk to you a little bit about the Ouija board. And is this a game or is this real? Is it a game or is this real? Well, you can just do your own kind of, some people think it's foolish. Some think it's just nonsense because it's a game. And as a matter of fact, they've done some scientists have studied this. And they believe that it's, because people say, our fingers are on it. Notice I don't have a planchette here. My fingers are on it. Our fingers are on it. And I swear I'm not moving it. I swear I'm not moving it. And it moves. And it will move to a letter. And it will spell things out. Or it'll move to answer a question. Or move to numbers. Okay. And I swear I'm not doing it. And enough people said that they looked into this, and scientists agree that yes, you're not doing it, at least you're not doing it consciously, because they have identified something they call the ideomotor effect, which is a motor having to do with your, the motor moving actually moving parts of your body, but doing so unconsciously. They think that there's things in our unconscious that cause us to, it's almost like wishing that your grandmother says this, and then your grandmother says this, but you did not make her say it. Your unconscious made you say it. Okay, that's the kind of thing that they're talking about. Scientists say that to try to explain this phenomenon. Spiritualists say, well, yes, your grandmother can't move that planchette, but your grandmother can speak to you through it. She can speak to you through it. The spirits speak to you through your psyche, and that's your subconscious that moves it. You're moving it, but you're moving it where they tell you to move it, but you don't realize you're doing it. So in that way, it does work, according to spiritualists. I hope that made sense. I hope it made sense. Bottom line is, to me, I don't know if it's a game. I don't know if it's not a game. I think there's hope. Some people are like, just like in anything else. Are there real psychics? Are there real mediums? Just like everything else. I think a lot of the psychics are fake, or they're hoax. It's a hoax. But I know enough about like how I see dead people in my dream to believe that people can get messages from the dead. I am not wishing these dead people in my dreams, because some people I even forget about. I think I forget about them. Where some people I don't even know who are dead, who are showing up in my dreams. So how can I be making that happen? I believe it's true. Okay, if we're going to believe that grandma is dead, and grandma, she's our guardian angel watching over us, if we're going to believe in the angels, if we're going to believe in the saints, if we're going to believe in all the things holy, the spirits, your father is always with you, your mother is, all the things that we say to ourselves to comfort ourselves when our loved ones pass on. If we're going to believe in all that, we have to believe in the evil too, that there are just as many bad spirits out there who wants to communicate with us as good. This is what is called a portal. Using a tool like this to invite spirits in at this time of the year, using something like a Ouija board, using something like a pendulum, using something like meditation or visualization, using something like, um, a psychic. Okay, um, we're inviting. It's an invitation. It is an invitation. Okay, we're inviting that. We are using these tools, all of these tools, to help us communicate. Okay. Now, so the only thing I want to say about this is, um, if you're going to use any kind of a tool, we say this to you all the time. Be absolutely certain in your intent. What is your intent? Follow certain rules. I've talked to you, we talk about the witch's jar we want to bury. If we're going to invite, if the veil is sin, and we're going to be inviting our spirits in our homes through having, which we'll talk about next week, and then I'm going to do a video next week, talk about ways that we can invite our ancestors in by building ancestor altars and things like that. If we're going to invite people in, we need to protect ourselves. That's why we have a witch's jar buried out inside or hidden in among our decorations outside somewhere to keep the evil from coming in. If those things make sense to you, something like this you got to take serious too. You have to take it serious. Okay. So I did a lot of research and I found just a few basic rules. You do your own research, but I want to say right away there's a few things that everybody seems to agree on about the Ouija board or the spirit board, and that is treat it seriously. Treat it seriously, whether you think it is or not. If you're invited or you want to try to communicate with the dead through a Ouija board, don't do it to mock the spirits. Don't set up, a spooky house or don't go to a cemetery and do it. Oh my goodness. Everybody said, please do not, please do not. Because it just is all of the good ancestors and the good dead lying in the cemetery. There are people in that cemetery that are not good. There are forces in that cemetery that are not good. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. Especially at the time when the veil is thin. Yes, on the Sunday afternoon in the middle of summer, when you're going there just to visit, having sharing a picnic over be sitting beside grandma's grave, that's lovely. But when the veil is thin, towards around Halloween or Samhain, in a cemetery, using a Ouija board, trying to conjure up spirits, no way. No way. Okay? Don't ever do it alone, they say. Don't ever do it alone. Don't ever do it when you're depressed or you're ill, or you're suffering from anxiety, or you're someone who suffers with addiction, because those are negativities that an entity, a dangerous entity can feed on those negativities. Do it in a group. They say do it in a group of like 3 or 4 people, maybe 5 people. Um, do it together, but one person should be in charge. One person, what I mean one person should be in charge is that means one person is in charge of asking the questions. One person is in charge of, inviting the spirits who they're going to invite. One person is in charge of saying goodbye and closing out the board. One person. Okay. It says, the reason you keep seeing me do this is because it says never to take your hand. One person at least has to have their hand on the board, on the planchette at all times if it is touching the board. Don't ever leave the planchette on the board without hands on it, particularly for a short time. I could do it here quickly, but I'm just trying to make a point because I have not invited anybody in. I'm not just leaving this on the shelf. When I store this, by the way, this is up on my shelf. It's sort of a decoration in my room. It's just up on the shelf so people can see it up against the wall. The planchette is tucked in a drawer. It's not on top, but I don't store it on top because that's inviting anything to come in and take possession of the board. Okay. No mocking, no going, ooh, this is so creepy, this is scary, you're making fun of the dead, or whatever. Come on, be respectful. This is a form of communication. You've invited guests into wherever you are with this board. You need to be respectful. Take the steps to treat this like you would any other kind of magic. Cleanse your area first, smudge it, prepare your area, go over the rules with the people that are being involved, be clear in who you wish to contact. Excuse me. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Be clear with who you want to contact, what kind of things you want to ask to the person. Okay. Um, and so you invite them in. One person asks the question. Ask questions that the spirit would be able to answer. Don't try to trick them. You know, uh, keep in mind when they lived. Don't ask them anything about trying to predict the future or give you information about anything about your future. At this time, we're just asking questions. Okay. And we need to watch, and it always also says to watch for dangers that you think that something is trying to take over the board. If it keeps going to the corners, around to the corners, or it keeps going, or if it tries to go down the alphabet in order, count down or up the numbers, counting down, you need to close it out immediately. And by closing it out, the person in charge has to close it and say goodbye. Goodbye. And we're going to use this goodbye every time no matter how we talk to our spirits, our ancestors, when they come and visit us, whether it's in a dumb supper, whether it's in a meditation, whether it's for automatic writing, whatever you use, goodbye. Goodbye. They leave. They leave. Okay? All right, let me change my camera. After you finished talking to the Ouija board or your spirit board, your ancestors, when you go to store your board, again, store the board separate, store the planchette somewhere else. So mine's going back up on my shelf. My planchette will be going back in my drawer. Okay. Now somebody asked the question at one time, what do we do if we had a really bad experience? What if some of those dangerous things happen, like you think something has taken over and possessed the spirit board or the Ouija board, and people say, I'm not doing this again. I want out of here. I never want to use this again. I got to get rid of it. Your first impression might be to burn it. And everybody that I listen to says, do not burn a Ouija board. Burning a Ouija board, if you think you're destroying it, you're actually going to be releasing whatever's inside of the board. So they say never do that. The best way to get rid of it is bury it. And again, don't bury it with the planchette. Bury the board one place and the planchette far away in another place, because you don't want to ever dispose of it in a place where those two things have a chance of coming back together. Okay, so that's the best way. If you're going to throw it in the trash, throw the board away one time. Throw the planchette away another time. Completely different. So they don't have a chance really of getting together in the landfill. Okay. Now, I said earlier in the video that I don't really tend to use this. What do I use? What methods do I use to communicate with the dead, other than in my dreams? Okay. I use simply tarot cards. I use tarot cards. And now, of course, this deck, the Santa Muerte deck, does have advice from the dead on each card, with each card. Okay. With each card, this is the Page of Wands. And with each card, with the Page of Wands, I can look at my little book and I can find that, let's see. I can never find anything in the pages in these little books. Let's see, that's Swords. Wands, okay. What did I say? Page of Wands. You see, when I look at the Page of Wands, I interpret a meaning, and then I can also see an extra advice of the dead. Where the dead is advising me here, to become more independent and to manage my own affairs, okay? And not delay, not avoiding delay. Don't delay. Don't delay. Okay? So they're really giving me advice. They're really giving me advice. So that's kind of cool that I get advice, but do you have to use these kind of deck to get advice? No, any kind of a tarot deck. You don't need a particular advice because anytime you do tarot, you're asking the questions that you want answered, and who is giving you the answers? The energies, right? If you're asking deliberately and you set up your deck deliberately, your spread, to ask your ancestors to help you, you're calling upon those energies to help to advise you. Just like you might be calling on them, sometimes we call on the energies of the elements. Okay, it's the same kind of thing. And I showed you what did I show you last week? On Tuesday, I think it was. I'm looking through my book to see. These videos are becoming a blur. But I did um the Ancestry Tarot spread I did. And that was all about what my relationship is with my ancestors. Coming up next week, we're going to do another. I'm going to do different kind of a tarot spread every week, so we can really try to communicate with the ancestors. But you can also ask your ancestors to speak to you through your own cards, and they do not have to be a Santa Muerte deck. They can be a Rider-Waite deck. They can be the Tarot of the Bunny Rabbit. It does not matter. Whatever deck you can read, whatever deck that you really identify, you really feel close to, or that your ancestors might feel really close to. You know, my grandmother loved flowers, so I might use this wonderful oracle deck that is all about flowers, or a tarot deck. You know, so, or my grandfather was of Irish descent, so I might want to do this deck that is all about the ancient Celts, right? Okay, do you get it? So you can use whatever you want. Be clear in what you want, what your intention is when you go to communicate, and use the tool you trust. Use the tool you trust. Whatever method you're going to use, cleanse your area, invite your ancestors to join you. Ask the questions that can be answered. Don't ask them questions they can't answer. Listen carefully, and when you're finished, thank them, dismiss them, and say goodbye. Thank you for joining me. Can't stay here. I hope to see you again. Thanks for coming. Goodbye. Okay? All right? All right. Choose the tool you trust. Thank you for watching me today. See you tomorrow. I'm Rebecca, and I wish you blessings.